My name is Alara Vance, I'm 28, and this is the story of how my family tried to erase me. It began in a boardroom that smelled of betrayal, where my grandfather's will was read aloud. To my perfect brother, an estate. To my parents, a fortune. To me, a single rusted key and $1. The sound of their laughter was a physical blow, a public declaration that I was worthless. They thought they had buried me, but they had just given me the shovel to dig my way out. Before I tell you how that $1 ignited a war, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that like and subscribe button, especially if you've ever had to fight to prove your family wrong. Trust me, you're going to want to hear what happens next. The boardroom smelled of leather and betrayal. I sat at the far end of the long, polished table, my hands folded tightly in my lap, trying to look like I belonged. Vance Enterprises, San Francisco headquarters, was all glass and steel, a monument to my grandfather's wine empire, but it felt like a mausoleum today. The air was heavy with forced grief and the sharp tang of ambition. My family, my father Richard in his tailored suit, my mother Eleanor with her diamond studs glinting, and my brother Caleb, the golden boy in his CEO smirk, sat closer to the head of the table, their chairs angled away from me. I was the black sheep, the photojournalist who'd traded Napa's vineyards for gritty street shots in Oakland. They'd made it clear I was an embarrassment, and I felt it now, my thrift store blazer itching against my skin. Mr. Sterling, the family lawyer, stood at the head, his gray hair catching the fluorescent light as he adjusted his glasses. The will reading was a formality, they'd said. Grandfather Arthur Vance, the man who'd turned a single acre into a global brand, had died 2 weeks ago. I'd cried alone in my tiny apartment, clutching the old Polaroid he'd given me when I was 10. He'd been the only one who saw something in me, who didn't flinch when I said I wanted to chase stories, not stocks. I thought he'd understood. Sterling's voice droned through the distributions. Caleb got the Marin estate and a chunk of liquid assets. My father got the Manhattan penthouse, my mother a trust fund to keep her in Chanel. I waited, my heart thudding, hoping for something, anything that said he'd remembered me. Sterling paused, his eyes flicking to me, and the room stilled. To my granddaughter Alara Vance, he read, I leave the old workshop key and the sum of $1. The words hit like a slap. $1? A rusted key? Laughter rippled through the room, sharp and cruel. Caleb's smirk widened, his eyes glinting with victory. My mother hid her laugh behind a gloved hand, her gaze sliding past me, like I was invisible. My father didn't even look up, just scribbled something on his notepad. The cousins, aunts, and uncles chuckled, their pitying glances burning my skin. I felt my face flush, my chest tighten. The key, heavy in the envelope Sterling slid across the table, was a cold, jagged thing, its edges biting into my palm as I clutched it. $1. A public insult, carved into legal parchment. I wanted to scream, to throw the key at them, to demand why grandfather had done this. Hadn't he seen me? Hadn't he loved me? The room spun, their whispers a dull roar in my ears. I was 28, broke, and now branded worthless by the man I'd thought believed in me. I stared at the table, my hands trembling under it, willing myself not to cry, not here. Not in front of them. Caleb leaned back, his voice loud enough for everyone. Well, Alara, at least you can frame the check. More laughter. I forced a smile, my lips quivering, and stood, clutching the envelope. Excuse me, I mumbled, my voice barely audible. I walked out, their eyes like knives in my back, the weight of humiliation pressing me down with every step. Outside, the San Francisco fog swallowed me. I leaned against the building, the key digging into my hand, and let the tears come. Rock bottom wasn't a place, it was this moment, this feeling, like I'd been erased. I almost didn't go back. The boardroom door loomed like a guillotine, but Mr. Sterling's voice on the phone had been insistent. Miss Vance, there's an addendum, you need to be here. So I stood in the hallway, my boots scuffing the marble, the rusted key still in my pocket. I'd spent the last hour wandering the Embarcadero, replaying the laughter, the dollar, the way Caleb's smirk had cut deeper than any knife. But something in Sterling's tone, calm, almost kind, pulled me back. The room was quieter now, the family still seated, their faces a mix of annoyance and curiosity. Caleb tapped his pen, impatient. My mother adjusted her scarf, avoiding my eyes. Sterling stood again, holding a sealed envelope, its wax stamp red and unbroken. There's a private codicil, he said, his voice steady, to be executed after the primary will. He looked at me, and my stomach twisted. What now? Another joke? He broke the seal and read. To my granddaughter, Alara Vance, I grant sole operational control of the Vance Estate vineyard for 1 year. Should she make it profitable and win a medal at the Sonoma Valley Wine Competition, she shall inherit a 70% controlling stake in Vance Enterprise. The room froze. My breath caught, a sharp gasp I couldn't hide. 70%? The heart of the empire, wineries, distribution, the whole damn thing? Caleb's pen snapped in his hand. My father's face went red, his voice low and venomous. This is a betrayal. My mother's scarf slipped, her mouth open. The cousins whispered, their shock a buzzing hive. I stood there, the key burning in my pocket, my mind racing. A test. Not an insult, a challenge. Caleb shot up, his chair scraping. This is insane, she's a photographer, not a vintner, she'll ruin us. His voice cracked, and I saw it, fear. For the first time he was afraid of me. My father joined in, calling it the ravings of a senile man. The room erupted, accusations flying, but I barely heard them. I looked at Sterling, his eyes calm, almost proud. The codicil is airtight, he said. Arthur was clear. I touched the key, its rough edges grounding me. The workshop. It was at the vineyard, a place I hadn't seen since I was a kid, when grandfather would let me trail him through the vines, my camera swinging from my neck. The dollar wasn't a slap, it was a dare. Prove them wrong, Alara. My heart pounded, not with shame now, but with something new. Anger, maybe, or hope. I met Caleb's glare, my voice steady. I'll do it. The family's rage followed me out, their voices echoing down the hall. I didn't care. For the first time in years I felt alive, like I had a chance to be more than their punchline. The key wasn't rusted scrap, it was a lifeline, and I was going to grab it. The Vance Estate vineyard was a ghost of itself. I stood at the gate, the key in one hand, my duffel bag in the other, staring at rows of gnarled vines stretching into the Sonoma fog. The air smelled of damp earth and decay, a far cry from the polished boardroom. The estate house loomed on the hill, its paint peeling, windows dark. This was my kingdom now, and it was falling apart. Mateo, the foreman, met me at the porch. He was in his 60s, his face weathered like old oak, his eyes sharp but tired. Miss Alara, he said, shaking my hand. Your grandfather spoke of you. His tone was respectful but guarded, like he wasn't sure I'd last a week. I didn't blame him. The crew, 5 workers, all older, but all loyal to grandfather, watched me from the barn, their whispers carried on the wind. They saw a city girl, not a vintner. The reality hit hard. The equipment was rusted, the irrigation system half broken. The books, which Mateo showed me in the cramped office, were a mess of red ink. Suppliers hadn't been paid, and the wine in the cellar was 2 years past its prime. I sat at the desk, my head in my hands, the weight of it all crushing me. I wasn't a businesswoman. I didn't know soil pH or fermentation. I was a fool to think I could do this. Then Caleb made it worse. By the second week, he'd slashed the estate's budget, rerouting funds to the corporate arm in Napa. Suppliers stopped returning my calls, spooked by rumors, spread by Caleb, I was sure, that I was an amateur running the place into the ground. At a local growers' meeting, I overheard a vintner whisper, Vance Estate's done. That girl's a joke. I left early, my face burning, and drove back to the estate alone, the road blurring through tears. Mateo found me that night, sitting on the porch, staring at the stars. You're not quittin', are you? He asked, his voice gruff. I shook my head, but my voice betrayed me. They want me to fail, Mateo, all of them. He didn't sugarcoat it. They do, but your grandfather didn't. He handed me a mug of coffee, black and bitter, and walked away. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep me from packing my bag. Still, the isolation grew. The crew worked, but they didn't trust me yet. The valley shunned me, and my family's silence was louder than their laughter had been. Every morning I woke to new problems, a broken pump, a cancelled order, another debt notice. Caleb's shadow loomed, his sabotage a constant knife. I was drowning, the codicil's hope fading into a cruel mirage. I clutched the key at night, its edges worn from my fingers, wondering if I'd been wrong. Maybe I was the failure they all saw. Then, one evening, I couldn't sleep. The workshop called to me, its locked door a mystery I'd avoided too long. I grabbed a flashlight and headed down the path, the key heavy in my hand. Whatever was behind that door, it was my last shot at understanding why grandfather had chosen me. The workshop door creaked open, the rusted key turning with a reluctant grind. I stepped inside, my flashlight cutting through the dark, revealing a room frozen in time. Dust motes danced in the beam, settling on shelves of old tools, glass bottles, and stacks of notebooks. The air smelled of oak and earth, like the vineyard itself had been bottled here. My boots echoed on the wooden floor, each step a trespass into grandfather's world, a world I'd been too young to understand when he'd let me tag along, my camera clicking at shadows. I set the flashlight on a workbench and opened a notebook. His handwriting, sharp and slanted, filled the pages, soil analyses, weather charts, grape yields, decades of obsession distilled into ink. I flipped through, my heart sinking. This was a vintner's mind, not a photographer's. I was out of my depth. But then a page caught my eye. Phoenix grape. A varietal he'd bred in secret, resilient to Sonoma's shifting climate, meant to thrive where others failed. Sketches of vines, notes on organic methods, and a single line underlined, "This is the future." I sank to the floor, the notebook in my lap, and kept reading. Hours passed, the cold seeping through my jeans, but I didn't care. Tucked between the pages, I found photographs. My photographs. A blurry shot of the vineyard at dawn, taken when I was 12. A candid of grandfather laughing, his hands stained with grape juice. Beneath one he'd written in that same sharp script, "You see the truth, Alara, not what's posed for the camera." My throat tightened, tears blurring the words. He'd kept them, he'd seen me even when I felt invisible. The weight of the last weeks, the humiliation, the sabotage, the loneliness, cracked open. I sobbed, clutching the notebook, the flashlight rolling across the floor. He hadn't given me $1 to mock me. He'd given me a chance to build something real. I wasn't just fighting Caleb, or the valley's whispers. I was fighting for his vision. For the girl he'd believed in. By dawn I had a plan. I found Mateo in the barn, his hands busy with a broken trellis. "We're going to plant the Phoenix grape," I said, holding up the notebook. His eyes narrowed, skeptical, but he listened as I explained. "Organic methods, a hidden plot behind the old oak grove, small enough to keep secret." "It's what he wanted," I said. "It's why he gave me the key." Mateo rubbed his jaw, then nodded. "All right, Miss Alara, let's try." We started that week, just me, Mateo, and 3 workers who didn't scoff when I mentioned grandfather's name. We cleared the plot by hand, the work blistering my palms, but it felt good, like I was clawing back control. The vines went in, fragile but stubborn, and every evening I checked them, whispering to them like they could hear me. It was a small victory, a quiet rebellion against Caleb's shadow, but it was mine. For the first time I didn't feel like I was drowning. The vineyard was starting to feel like home, but I was still alone. The crew worked hard, but they kept their distance, their loyalty to grandfather, not me. Mateo was kind but gruff, his advice practical, not personal. I missed having someone to talk to, someone who didn't see me as the boss or the failure. So when Genevieve showed up, her convertible gleaming in the driveway, I let myself hope. She was my cousin, the socialite who'd always been too polished for family fights. "Alara, darling," she said, air-kissing my cheeks, "you look exhausted, let me help." She wore linen and sunglasses, like she'd stepped out of a magazine, but her smile seemed genuine. Over coffee on the porch, I poured out my fears, Caleb's sabotage, the debt, the whispers in the valley. She listened, nodding, her manicured nails tapping the mug. "You need a brand," she said. "I know people, critics, influencers. I can get the word out." I hesitated, the key around my neck, heavy against my chest. But I was tired, and she was family. So I told her about the Phoenix grape, showed her the notebook, the hidden plot. Her eyes lit up. "This is brilliant," she said. "A comeback story. Let me handle the PR." I hugged her, relief washing over me. For the first time, I wasn't alone. It was a mistake. 2 weeks later, I found Mateo in the office, his face grim. "Check your email," he said. There was a cease and desist letter from Vance Enterprises, signed by Caleb's legal team. They claimed the Phoenix grape was corporate property based on stolen research, and barred me from using the Vance name on any wine. Distributors I'd been wooing backed out, citing legal concerns. The valley buzzed with new rumors. Alara Vance was a thief. I drove to Genevieve's hotel in Napa, my hands shaking on the wheel. She was at the bar sipping rosé, her smile faltering when she saw me. "What did you do?" I demanded, slamming the letter down. She didn't flinch. "I did what's best for the family," she said, her voice cold. "You're in over your head, Alara. Caleb offered me a steak if I helped him stop you. She'd photocopied the notebook, given it to him. My own cousin, my only ally, had sold me out. I walked out. The betrayal worse than the boardroom laughter. Back at the estate, I sat in the workshop, the notebook open, grandfather's words mocking me. I'd trusted her, and now the phoenix grape, my one shot, was slipping away. The crew avoided my eyes, their trust shaken. Mateo stayed late, fixing a pump, but even he didn't know what to say. I was cornered, the walls closing in, and this time there was no key to unlock a way out. I didn't sleep. The cease and desist letter sat on the desk, its words branded into my brain. Caleb had the notebook, the grape, the power. I was one bad harvest from losing everything, but giving up meant proving them right, that I was the failure they'd always seen. I couldn't let that happen, not to me, not to grandfather. I went back to the workshop, the flashlight beam trembling in my hand. I wasn't looking for grapes this time, I was looking for a lifeline. In a box under the workbench I found letters, dozens of them, yellowed and tied with twine. They were between grandfather and Julian Croft, a vintner I'd heard of, a legend who'd shunned corporate wine for craft. The letters were fierce, full of arguments about soil and soul, but there was respect there, a rivalry rooted in shared values. One line from Croft stuck out. "You're the only one who gets it, Arthur. The rest are just chasing money." I didn't think. I grabbed a bottle of grandfather's last private stock wine from the cellar, tucked the letters under my arm, and drove to Croft's vineyard in the pre-dawn light. His place was smaller than ours, but alive. Vines heavy with grapes, workers already in the fields. Croft himself answered the door, a wiry man in his 70s, his eyes sharp under a straw hat. "You're Arthur's girl," he said, not a question. I laid it all out, the codicil, Caleb's sabotage, Genevieve's betrayal. I showed him the letters, poured the wine, let him taste grandfather's last work. "I'm not asking for pity," I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. "I'm asking for help. You and he believed in the same thing, wine that means something. Caleb's trying to bury that. I won't let him." Croft sipped the wine, his face unreadable. I thought he'd laugh me off, send me packing. Instead, he set the glass down and said, "You've got guts, kid. Arthur would have liked that." He agreed to help, not with money, but with his bottling facility, his contacts, his name. He knew sommeliers and critics who cared about story, not brands, an underground network that could get the Phoenix wine to the right tables. "But you've got to deliver," he warned. "One bad bottle and you're done." I drove back, my heart pounding, not with fear now, but with purpose. Mateo was waiting, his arms crossed. "You look different," he said. I grinned, the first real smile in weeks. "We've got a shot, Mateo, a real one." That week we doubled down on the Phoenix plot, working nights to keep it secret. Croft's crew came by, quiet and efficient, helping us bottle the first test batch. I tasted it, a deep, bright red, like courage in a glass, and knew we had something. The valley still whispered, Caleb's lawyers still loomed, but I wasn't alone anymore. Croft's network was my shield, Mateo's loyalty my anchor. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time I felt like I could win. The Sonoma Valley wine competition was a blur of crystal glasses and murmured critiques, but the real battle was at Vance Estate. I'd spent weeks preparing, not just for the judges but for tonight. A tasting that would make or break me. The estate house gleamed, its walls scrubbed, its windows sparkling under strung lights. The vineyard glowed in the dusk, the Phoenix vines hidden but alive, their grapes now bottled and waiting. In the center of the tasting room, on a lit plinth, sat the framed $1 check, its edges curling like a dare. I'd invited critics, distributors, Croft's underground network, and by special request my entire family. They'd come, their faces tight with disdain, expecting my failure. I wore a simple black dress, the rusted key on a leather cord around my neck. My hands shook as I greeted guests, but Mateo's nod from the corner steadied me. Croft was there too, his straw hat traded for a blazer, his eyes glinting with approval. The room filled, sommeliers in tailored suits, critics with notepads, locals who'd shunned me now curious. My family stood apart, Caleb at the front, his smirk a blade. My mother clutched her purse, my father's jaw tight. Genevieve lingered by the door, her eyes avoiding mine. The servers poured the Phoenix wine, its deep red catching the light. I held my breath as glasses were raised, the room falling silent. A critic, a woman with sharp cheekbones, sipped first, Her eyes widened and she whispered to the man beside her. Murmurs spread, glasses clinking, faces lighting up. Complex, someone said. Bold but balanced, another. A sommelier from San Francisco, one of Croft's contacts, stood and raised his glass. This, he said, is a masterpiece. My chest loosened, a laugh bubbling up. They liked it. They loved it. I caught Mateo's grin, Croft's subtle nod. But then Caleb stepped forward, his voice cutting through the hum. This is a fraud. Heads turned, the room tensing. That wine is stolen. Corporate property. She's using our family's research, our name, to play vintner. He gestured to the plinth, his face red. She's a disgrace, and you're all falling for it. The critics hesitated, pens pausing. My family nodded, their whispers venomous. I felt the old humiliation creeping back, my face burning. But I wasn't that girl in the boardroom anymore. I stepped forward, my voice steady. You're wrong, Caleb. This wine is mine. It's grandfather's vision, not yours. I turned to the crowd, my heart pounding. He believed in something real, not your corporate machine. Taste it. You'll know. The room wavered, the critics glancing between us. Then, Mr. Sterling emerged from the back, his briefcase in hand. As executor of Arthur Vance's private estate, he said, his voice calm but firm, I have one final item. He held up a recorder, its red light blinking. Arthur's last deposition, recorded weeks before his death. He pressed play, and grandfather's voice filled the room, rough but clear. I built Vance Enterprises for love of the vine, not greed, he said. My family lost that. All but Alara. The Phoenix grape is hers, funded by my private trust, free of corporate claim. She sees what I saw, the truth. He paused, his voice softening. I'm proud of you, girl. The room was still, the weight of his words sinking in. My eyes stung, but I didn't look away. Caleb's face drained, his mouth opening, closing. My mother's purse slipped to the floor. The critics erupted, their applause drowning out Caleb's sputtered protests. A distributor shook my hand, then another. The sommelier raised his glass again. To Alara Vance, he said, and the room echoed it. I looked at the $1 check, then at the key around my neck. This was my victory, not just over Caleb, but over the shame they'd tried to bury me in. The Phoenix had risen and I'd carried it. The competition results came the next morning. The Phoenix wine took gold, the judges' notes praising its soulful depth. With the critics' endorsements and grandfather's recording, the codicil held. I inherited the 70% stake in Vance Enterprises, the empire now mine to reshape. Caleb's reputation shattered, his sabotage exposed in the press. My family's minority shares left them powerless, their boardroom throne dismantled. I didn't gloat, didn't need to. Their silence was enough. I moved into the estate house, its rooms no longer cold. The vineyard thrived, the Phoenix vines spreading, their grapes promising next year's harvest. I kept the crew, gave Mateo a raise, and brought in Croft as an advisor, his gruff wisdom a daily gift. The corporate board was gone, replaced by people who cared, farmers, artists, dreamers like me. I didn't fire my family, but I didn't let them near the heart of it either. They'd have to earn their place, just as I had. One afternoon, I sat in the workshop, grandfather's notebooks spread out. I'd started the Phoenix Grant, a foundation to fund struggling artists, painters, writers, photographers like I'd been. The interest from my inheritance would keep it running, a legacy beyond wine. I smiled, tracing his handwriting. He'd given me more than an empire, he'd given me purpose. Months later, I walked the vineyard at sunset, the rose glowing gold. My grandfather's old film camera hung from my shoulder, its weight familiar. I stopped by the Phoenix plot, the vines strong now, their roots deep. I lifted the camera, framing the horizon, and clicked. The key around my neck caught the light, no longer rusted but polished by my touch. It wasn't about the money, never had been. It was about the freedom to build something true, to prove I was more than their laughter. I thought of the boardroom, the dollar, the years I'd felt small. They were gone, burned away in the fire of this fight. I'd inherited a challenge, not a fortune, and in meeting it, I'd found my worth. The vineyard was mine, but so was the future. Open, endless, mine to shape. I lowered the camera, the shutters click echoing in the quiet. This was my legacy, not given, but earned. That rusted key looked like an insult, but it was an invitation. It taught me that life's greatest opportunities often come disguised as dead ends or disadvantages. Don't be afraid to turn the key on what others have dismissed. Your biggest challenge might just be hiding the path to your greatest victory. Thank you for joining me on this journey. For more stories about turning obstacles into triumphs, hit that like button and subscribe. I'd love to hear what you thought.